The hostage crisis at the 1972 Olympic Games and how it affected the rights and responsibilities of people all over the world.
In the years leading up to the 1972 Olympics, the West German government preached how the games would be the happy games and how these games would rehabilitate the country in the eyes of the world since the end of the Nazi Party. So, Leah, as we're getting started and we're learning more about this topic, why do you think these games are called the Happy Games?
These games were called the Happy Games because since the end of the 1936 Olympics, the German government really wanted to prove how they weren't anti-Semitic and how all those things that happened weren't true. So they wanted these games to prove that they were really a good country.
This event ignited protests and demanded the West Germans and Olympics take responsibility for this terrible event, sparking change in how athletes and patrons' security should be prioritized no matter the circumstances.
The hostage situation and massacre highlighted the flaws in these happy games and how the security rights of athletes cannot be taken lightly.
In 1936, Germany hosted the Games in Berlin under the rule of the Nazi Party. These games were surrounded with blatant racism and anti-Semitism. All right, you guys, what do you think was the main cause of the racism and anti-Semitism?
I think that because of Adolf Hitler and his way of instilling fear into the people, that the people didn't really have a choice, and they kind of just went with all of this, and they acted in the way of the racism and the anti-Semitism towards the athletes.
These games were an overall disaster due to obvious cheating, favoritism, and not letting Jewish athletes compete.
These games had a really dark stain on the country's history due to the fact of all of those problems, and people were very skeptical to go back in 1972, even with them promoting these happy games. Just before the 1972 Olympics, Israel and Palestine's relationship was very shaky, and the Palestinian terrorists were trying to scare the Israel people by doing this event.
Throughout history, Palestine and Israel have had constant conflict with each other.
And this terrorist attack was just another constant conflict and was just another added on reason to why their war was just going to keep on going and why this conflict hasn't been resolved in hundreds of years and why it still isn't resolved today. There were many people involved in this event and there were many reasons why this event even happened. The people involved were the Olympics, the athletes, the organizers, and the Palestinian terrorist group called Black September.
The West German organizers aimed to show a peaceful, modern Germany, while the Israel team focused on competition.
Black September looked to draw the attention to the Palestinian cause and take it away from the Israel, while they also planned this attack to demand the release of many of their prisoners from Israel and German prisons.
The attack was inspired by ongoing Middle East tensions and the group's desire to use the global stage of the Olympics to further the political message.
So Black September's main goal by doing this at the Olympics was to kind of use this big global event as a way of kind of showing their cause and taking away the significance of the Israel athletes.
Why do you think that they chose the Olympic event to do this act instead of a different situation?
Like I said, I think they did this because how big of a global stage this is, that so many people were watching, they could get their message across so much easier by having many people view it, and not as many people are gonna view something else if it wasn't the Olympics.
So in your guys' personal opinion, what do you think their message was?
I think their overall message was they were just trying to instill fear into the Israel people because, doing this at the Olympics takes a lot of guts. Nick, what do you think?
I agree totally with what you just said, and I think that they're trying to get their case across that they will do anything and...
They'll do anything, even on the biggest global stage, to get their point across that they're just better than the Israel people. At 4 a.m, on September 5th, 1972, 8 Black September terrorists broke into the sleeping quarters of 11 Israel athletes.
The attackers, wearing sports clothing, acting like athletes at the event, snuck in over many fences, killing many people on their way to the athletes.
Yes, the terrorists broke over many fences dressed as athletes and killed many guards to get their way into the Israel sleeping quarters. Before the terrorists even got into the rooms of the athletes, they were confronted by a wrestling trainer and one of the Israel wrestling coaches. While they confronted them, they knew that these were not athletes, and one of them was shot and the other one was taken hostage with the athletes.
Unlike all the other athletes and coaches and guards, the attackers were heavily armed, which made it easy for them to get into the athletes' rooms.
The terrorists were heavily informed of the Israel athletes' locations, and they knew all of the rooms that they were in.
The attackers, demanding the release of Palestinian prisoners in Israel, which there was over 400 plus that were in Israel jail, initially seized the hostages and threatened to kill them if their demands were not met.
The terrorists, who struggled to even win the fight against the unarmed guards when they first got into the rooms, went past apartment 2 because they knew in that room there were the Israel shooting team, and they did not want a close quarters gunfight to start off their terrorist attack.
The Olympic Committee insisted that the games must go on, but the players did not want them to continue.
While all this was going on, the German police force tried to plan a rescue attempt to break into the hotel rooms where the terrorists were, but this overall failed because they realized that their actions were being broadcasted to over 1 billion people worldwide and that they could be seen doing this.
While this was going on, the attackers wanted a helicopter that would fly them to an airport where they could get away with all the hostages that they had captured and fly back to Palestine.
The attackers successfully loaded their hostages into the helicopters and flew 15 miles to an airfield nearby, where there was a plane waiting for them. But inside the plane, there was the German police force disguised as a Lufthansa flight crew that was waiting for them. Although the German military was much better armed than the terrorists were, due to West Germany's post-war constitution, the armed forces could not aid the civilian police. Therefore, the police had to do this whole job on their own.
The police force was completely set up in the wrong position. They had the wrong type of equipment, not good enough guns for this. They had assault rifles and not snipers, which they needed. And they were lined up to where they were facing each other, so if they were going to shoot, they would shoot each other's snipers and their own allies instead of the terrorists.
The German police force was terribly trained for this, and the Lufthansa flight crew that was supposed to be inside the plane to subdue the terrorists once they entered abandoned their posts because they were too scared. And the German police force was also supposed to have armored vehicles that were supposed to meet them there, but they got stuck in traffic because they were deployed too late.
At 10:34, the terrorists decided to go check the plane, and when no one was in there, they knew it was a setup. Shortly after that, the police and the terrorists had a gunfight where many hostages and terrorists were killed and policemen.
At 12:30 p.m. on September 6th, the fighting had finally stopped, and all 11 Israeli hostages were killed, along with 5 Black September terrorists and 1 West German policeman.
The attack caused rising tensions in the Middle East and was intended to bring international attention to the Palestinian cause. The victims were Israel athletes and coaches, and the incident shocked the world, highlighting the vulnerability of global events to political violence.
This event had a huge impact on the rest of the world, as it woke up the eyes of all the Western countries, and it made them realize that the threat of terrorism is very real and that it could happen to any country at any time.
After this event occurred, the security protocols for many public events has been changed and became way more strong than it used to be.
The Munich Olympics in 1972 were held in a politically charged era shaped by the Cold War, rising political terrorism, and global social movements. West Germany sought to present itself as a modern, peaceful nation after World War II, contrasting with the country's Nazi past. However, the Games were marred by the tragic attack by the Palestinian group Black September, which killed 11 innocent lives of Israel athletes. The impact of this event can still be heavily felt today, as the security measures in every single public event have been upped to hopefully have events like this never happen ever again.